The rain had stopped hours ago, but the asphalt outside Riverside Inc. studio still glistened under the amber streetlights. The town of Maple Hollow, just south of Denver, was usually asleep by this hour, except for the single strip where the neon signs never went out. A black SUV rolled past the shuttered diners and gas pumps, slowing as it neared the studio, the one with the large painted wings on the sidewall. Inside, faint music hummed from an old speaker. Behind the counter stood Daniel Mercer, the owner. He was tall, fit, with the posture of a man who used to command rooms. His graying blonde hair was slicked back, his blue eyes sharp, almost rehearsed. A tattooed sleeve ran down his right arm, an elaborate compass surrounded by faded names. He checked his watch. 10:47 p.m. He always kept the studio open late for private clients. He didn't hear the approaching footsteps, not at first. The sound of rainwater dripping from the awning masked the quiet rhythm of boots crossing the street. Then came a voice. Controlled. Daniel Mercer? Federal agents. Open the door. His hand froze. The compass ink on his wrist trembled as the knock came again, harder this time. And that was how the lie began to unravel. Long before the arrests, Daniel Mercer was known as the cool ex-agent. He had left the Bureau 6 years earlier after a career that included undercover assignments, tactical raids, and a short stint in behavioral analysis. To the public, he was the picture of discipline, a man who traded his badge for an artist's needle. Locals loved him. Veterans stopped by just to shake his hand. Young people booked sessions for the FBI touch. But Daniel's reputation wasn't built on tattoos. It was built on charm, and on the promises he made behind closed doors. He had launched a modeling initiative, or a muse, he called it, claiming it was a platform for local talent to feature in fashion collaborations and lifestyle campaigns. The pitch was irresistible: free photo shoots, exposure, travel, and guidance from a man who said he knew people. And people believed him. Especially Emily Hart, a 22-year-old art student from Fort Collins who dreamed of breaking into fashion. She met Daniel at a cafe where he was sketching tattoos in a leather notebook. He'd smiled, complimented her artwork, and told her she had presence. Within minutes, she was convinced she'd met a mentor, someone who saw her potential. By spring, Emily had become one of Daniel's featured models. He arranged a shoot inside the tattoo studio: low light, minimalist backdrop, tasteful artistic shots, as he described them. He had a way of lowering defenses, professional yet intimate. He called everyone kiddo and made self-deprecating jokes about being too old for this influencer stuff. More young women followed. A few were aspiring models, others just wanted to feel seen. He recruited through Instagram, coffee shops, and even at charity events. Then came Lydia Rowe, 25, a fitness instructor. Unlike Emily, Lydia was skeptical. She'd heard rumors that Daniel's private sessions were uncomfortable, that some photos were never returned. But she also knew how power worked. Daniel had connections, or claimed to. So, she went along, keeping her guard up. What she found was something else. A man who used confidence like a weapon. He would praise, then undermine. Offer opportunity, then guilt. Always testing boundaries, cloaking manipulation in mentorship. "You're not trusting yourself enough," he'd say. "That's what keeps you small. Let me help you step out of fear." It wasn't just Lydia or Emily. It was a pattern, a psychological script that played out in every session. The first report came anonymously. A local newspaper received a tip, vague but troubling. It mentioned inappropriate conduct at a tattoo studio run by a former federal agent. At first, police were cautious. Daniel was respected, connected. They'd seen him at charity events, parades, even fundraisers for veterans. But behind the scenes, stories were emerging. Victims described coercion, promises of modeling contracts that turned into pressure for exclusive sessions. He had used alcohol, isolation, and his former status to silence doubt. Detective Marianne Torres led the case. A 38-year-old investigator with sharp instincts and a quiet intensity, she had seen grooming cases before, but never one involving someone with such credibility. She began interviewing witnesses discreetly, using coded invitations, community outreach surveys, wellness check interviews. It didn't take long before she met Emily. The young woman was trembling when she spoke, words tumbling over themselves. "He made it sound like it was for my portfolio," she said. "Then he said if I wanted real work, I had to show I was serious. I didn't know how to say no." Marianne wrote everything down. The bureau of her early career had drilled professionalism into her, but her jaw tightened as she listened. Daniel Mercer wasn't just a manipulator, he was a strategist. Marianne's team gathered evidence for months. They subpoenaed messages, cross-checked timelines, and searched Daniel's studio under warrant. In his office drawer, they found contracts, unsigned, inconsistent, filled with manipulative clauses. On his phone, hundreds of messages referencing private opportunities. Then came the discovery that sealed the case. A hidden folder labeled Muse Sessions 1 to 12. Marianne stared at the screen in silence. The images weren't explicit, but the patterns were unmistakable: coercion disguised as consent, power masquerading as mentorship. When Daniel was finally brought in for questioning, he smiled like it was a misunderstanding. "Detective Torres," he said smoothly, "you have no idea how the modeling world works, do you?" Marianne leaned forward. "You mean the world where you promise young women success if they let you cross boundaries?" The smile faltered. For the first time in years, Daniel Mercer didn't have control of the room. The trial drew national attention. Headlines read, "Ex-FBI agent accused of exploitation through modeling scheme." Courtroom 4B was packed every day. Reporters, advocates, survivors sitting quietly at the back. Emily testified first. Her voice shook, but her story didn't. She described how Daniel had made her feel chosen, special, before the manipulation began. Lydia testified next, her tone sharper, her anger unrestrained. "He told me I was paranoid," she said, voice echoing through the courtroom, "that I'd never make it because I didn't trust men in power. He was right about one thing, I didn't, and now I know why." Daniel's defense tried to paint him as a misunderstood mentor. Miscommunication, they called it. Overzealous guidance. But the evidence, the messages, the contracts, the photos, told another story. When the verdict came, the air felt heavy with years of unspoken relief. Guilty on all counts. The sentence was staggering, over a century in prison. Not just for the crimes themselves, but for the calculated abuse of trust, for using authority as a weapon. Outside the courthouse, Emily and Lydia stood side by side. Neither spoke for a while. Then Emily whispered, "He made us think we needed him." Lydia nodded. "Now he's the one who needs explaining." Detective Torres watched from the steps. Justice, she knew, never undid the damage. It just stopped the bleeding. But in Maple Hollow, the studio lights went dark for the first time in years. The mural of wings on the wall faded under the weather, piece by piece, until it was gone. Months later, a new coffee shop opened across from where Riverside Ink Studio once stood. They kept the mural wall but painted over it, this time with a new design, a phoenix rising from ashes. Emily worked there part-time now, sketching between customers, her portfolio filled with art that wasn't about pain, but reclamation. Lydia opened a self-defense class for young women. Empower, she called it. And Detective Torres transferred to the state's Human Exploitation Unit, her name now synonymous with one word in Maple Hollow: accountability. In a quiet town that once believed in authority without question, people learned something new, that the power to protect doesn't always wear a badge, and that truth, no matter how buried, eventually finds its witness.